Strong Humans, how's it going? In this video, you're going to see me over here on the side. I'm doing a 30-minute nasal only aerobic capacity workout. My goal here is to increase my power output while keeping my mouth shut. And generally, when you're breathing through your nose, you're typically in a zone 2 capacity or typically in a zone 2 heart rate range. You can kind of hold a bit of a conversation. It's not necessarily pleasant, but that's that. So I'm going to have that playing here. A few things. What you're going to get from this video is you're going to get an understanding on why it is important, or why I believe it's important to build this capacity, if not just if you're a martial artist, but for any form of athlete. This is going to allow you to cook your opponents aerobically. This is going to allow you to have more power output than your opponents. And the people that you're competing against, by the time they're working super hard and huffing and puffing and trying to get a lot of air in, you're still going to be in a place where you're breathing calmly and you're not having to breathe through your mouth yet. What this is not going to be is it's not going to be a video that bashes mouth breathing, because oronasal ventilation, or breathing through the mouth and the nose, has its place. And its place is typically when you are trying to produce more power and potentially as much power as possible, whether it be against an opponent, whether it be in your sport. When you're doing as a high, like when you're sprinting, you're going to have to breathe through your mouth. But what I'm going to teach you how to build here is the ability to have high outputs, right, with lower heart rates. Okay, I want to mention something. This video is on the Flow Matrix channel. And the reason why this video is on the Flow Matrix channel, and I made this second channel because this channel allows me to talk raw about things. My other channel is much bigger. It's like 416,000 subscribers there. I put a lot into the production of those videos because I want those videos to be like almost like references for people. I put a lot into like why those ideas are important, some like historical references and research to back those ideas up. They're very polished. The goal of the videos here on this channel is no polish. I'm just talking to you, and I'm going to give you things that are going to help you. And a lot of these ideas I'm going to talk to you about before they hit my main channel. So with that being said, you might be seeing this collaborated with the main channel. Let me know if like this bothers you. I saw a comment from somebody where I collaborated a video from this smaller channel with my bigger channel, and they're like, could you stop the collaborations? I don't want to see this in my feed. Well, I mean, I get that. So I'm curious, are you annoyed if I put this kind of comment or collaborate this type of content? I'm just trying to bring more value at a higher speed, because I can't make those types of videos that are on my main channel. I can't make them fast, but I do have a breathing video that is going to go more in depth on some of the things I talk about here. That's going to be coming to the main channel in about 3 months. So like I said, 3 months. So that's why I'm trying to bring you some information right now. Now I want to tell you a quick story. Okay, we had the best, the probably the most famous ultra runner, or not ultra runner, but the most famous triathlete of all time, Mark the Grip Allen, on our podcast, the Mark Bell's Power Project. And when we talked to Mark, something that brought me a level of internal validation with what I was doing and made me kind of ignore what the scientists were saying was what the greatest athlete in triathlete history, what he thought about when it came to training his capacity. Because that's one thing that Mark was known for. He was known for being able to cook his opponents. He was the guy that would be able to have the most output versus everyone that he raced against. And it was counterintuitive the way he built that, because in that episode, and I would suggest going to go listen to that episode with Mark, he mentioned that he had a lot of his workouts, actually a majority of his workouts, were done in a zone 2 capacity, zone 2 heart range, because his goal was to increase his output at that heart rate.
Maximum speed that you can go at this point in time and still be aerobic. And so we did it, and my pace was about an 8:45 mile, which now I'd be happy to have that. But back then, that's like 3 minutes and 45 seconds slower than I was trying to hit on all my workouts. And so he goes, great, now just run at that, and you'll see over time as you we'll do a chunk of training here for the next few weeks where you don't go over that. And he goes, you'll start to get faster. I'm like, how can I win going an 8:45 mile? I mean, that won't beat guys that are twice my age. You know, I'm like, what? But I thought, just give it a try. And so sure enough, my pace started to get faster, 8:30 and then 8:15 and then 7:43,
A faster pace with a similar heart rate.
with the exact same heart rate.
How fast did you get? Like,
Eventually over time where I would do blocks of aerobic training, and then also you do have to add in speed work periodically, otherwise you'll kind of plateau. So the bulk of the meat of my training was more aerobic, and then I would fine tune that aerobic engine with strategically placed speed work where I was going like as fast as I could go.
yeah.
Eventually, my aerobic pace got down to a 5:30 mile. So I was able to run a 5.5 mile, 5:25 actually, 5:25 minute mile aerobically. So when I'm in a race and we're all going 5-minute pace, I'm barely pushing into that aerobic.
Like maybe almost not even breaking a sweat unless you're doing it for a while and it's hot out.
Yeah, well, I mean, it still hurts to run a 5-minute mile, but physiologically I was much better off than the guys who probably made that switch at 6-minute pace or 6:30 pace. I was I still had so much farther to go before I maxed out. And so that really became a huge benefit for me. And, a lot of guys would try that and they'd try it for like 2 weeks and go, screw it. This is too slow. I'm not going to get any faster. And it's like, and I'm different than everybody else on the planet. It's like, no, you're just not patient.
So with the what you see me doing on the assault bike right here, the reason why I'm not opening my mouth is I'm staying right at the edge of where I feel the need to ventilate through my mouth. I'm staying right at the edge, and the goal is to maintain it, to increase, not increase. Well, the goal is to increase this power output, but my goal is to have the highest power output possible without having to open my mouth and build that power output over time. And I'm going to tell you some numbers of what I'm able to do now versus when I started doing these types of exercises on the assault bike. So you can understand why this is important and also the difference it made for myself as a grappling athlete. But Mark mentioned that a lot of times he would work out alone because whenever he would work out with other triathletes, they would run themselves into the ground with their training. All of their training was super high output. All of their training was super high heart rates. And Mark, his secret weapon was this zone 2 capacity training. Because what that ended up happening is Mark could then have more power and create more power, run faster, swim faster, bike harder, while maintaining a lower heart rate than all his opponents. And then when Mark was forced to create more power, when he was creating more power, and then he was then breathing through his mouth and his nose, so he was having oral nasal ventilation, that output was way higher than what all the other athletes had to do. The thing too was that for Mark and versus the people that he was competing against, when Mark was in a zone 2, many of those athletes were already in the higher zones. So his zone 2 capacity was so broad that when he was there, other athletes were already working harder when he was not working as hard. Okay, so what that, for me, in a jiu-jitsu context, what that looks like for me is my opponent is breathing super hard through their mouth, and I'm still breathing calmly through my nose, lower heart rate, and I'm not nearly as stressed as they are. So I'm cooking them, right? That's what that looks like in application. Now, I wanted to tell you that story so that you could understand that this isn't BS or a fad. Because now I'm going to play this clip from Dr. Mike Israetel. Let's let it play.
And I'll head out for probably a 75-minute to a 90-minute slow jog. And I'll try and nasal breathe the whole time.
Yes, nasal breathing is almost certainly a gigantic waste of time. Humans were not meant to breathe just through their nose. The benefits of it are absolutely by no means clear. And if you can nasal breathe while you're exercising, there's a high probability that unless you're walking, you are not exercising hard enough. So I would say jog faster, put on a heavier vest, breathe through any means necessary. You will get into better shape, have better results, burn more fat, build more bone mass, more endurance, and all the good things will be even better.
Okay, that was probably enough time for that clip to play. Now, Dr. Israetel says that it's a fad. There's no difference between nasal and mouth breathing. And he's coming from it from an exercise science perspective. First off, from the application side of things, I find it very, very unfortunate when people that have a lot of influence speak with such absolutes when it comes to methodology. Because Mike, in practice, there's a video of him rolling with this guy named Johnny Shreve, and Johnny is not, at the time that they rolled together, I think Mike was a brown belt, or he already got his black belt, but he was close to getting his black belt. And Johnny had no experience with jiu-jitsu, so Mike is pretty much rolling with a novice. And within, I think, probably a minute, Mike is already gray, his skin tone changed, and he's breathing hard through his mouth because he has no breath control. Looking at that, in application, you cannot tell me that if you were able to have better aerobic capacity and keep your heart rate lower, you would be able to be calmer when rolling with Johnny. Because now let's talk about some of the science of nasal versus mouth breathing. And again, I want to make this clarifying fact. Mouth breathing isn't bad. But the goal with what I'm trying to share with you is we want to stave off the amount of time needed for us to have to start breathing through our mouth. If I am a fighter or a grappler, can I fight with my opponent and maintain good power while keeping my heart rate low, and then my opponent is slowly having his heart rate increase? There's things one can do in terms of technique, but there's also an ability that one can have with their aerobic capacity to maintain a power output on their opponent, where their opponent's working harder and harder and harder, breathing harder and harder and harder, while you are still breathing at a lower heart rate. That's what we're trying to build here. Because you can see from that video with Johnny and Mike does not have that ability. So the unfortunate thing is that we have professionals that are speaking on topics probably, referencing ideas in exercise science, but because they haven't put it into practice, they don't understand the benefits that these things can bring. Because now, nasal breathing naturally keeps the heart rate lower. Because when you're breathing through your nose, this is what you're supposed to be breathing through when you're asleep at pretty much all times of the day, outside of when you're working really hard, right? You're supposed to be breathing through here, but because of phones, because of a lot of bad habits that we have today, a lot of us snore, a lot of us have sleep apnea, so a lot of us are breathing through our mouth when we're sleeping. This leads to higher heart rates. This leads to worse quality sleep. This leads to worse performance. So first off, we already know that the nasal breathing through the nose, can keep the heart rate lower. Nasal breathing is better for your immune system because you have hairs and stuff inside of your nose that helps to block pathogens that could make you sick. Nasal breathing allows you to produce more nitric oxide, which is going to help you oxygenate your tissues better. So you're going to be able to better oxygenate your tissues when you're working if you're breathing through your nose. Nasal breathing is known to be more parasympathetic. That is not pseudoscience. Parasympathetic means it keeps you calmer. So think about this in athletic context. If you're doing something that's actually stressful, like jiu-jitsu, like playing a sport, etc., and you're able to also keep calmer because of the way you're breathing, is that not a performance enhancer? What is the first thing that happens to new jiu-jitsu athletes? Well, one of the first things is they stop breathing, but progression from there is that they begin to panic when the round goes deeper and deeper. Their breathing becomes, and then sooner or later they just quit because they're exhausted. But what if you're able to keep your heart rate lower, you're able to keep your parasympathetic system heightened, so you're able to stay calmer, and you're able to have a high output, meaning you're having a high output against your opponent while keeping your heart rate low. That's what this workout that I'm doing here helps me with. And that's what the things I'm going to be sharing with you, the habits I'm going to be sharing with you, that's why these things are going to be so beneficial for you to learn. And it's so important. I want to stress this. It's through application, because it's the people that, like Mike, unfortunately, it's the people that look at all the science without applying any of these things that are the quickest to say something doesn't work. But I've been doing this stuff since 2017, maybe late 2016. That's when I read Patrick Mckeown's book, The Oxygen Advantage. That's what got me into starting to pay attention to the way I breathe. Because I noticed that when I was sitting, like my ex-girlfriend at the time, uh, she mentioned this to me once, and it was before I read the book, but I was like, oh, wow. I'd be at my computer with my old school Beats headphones on, getting work done, and she'd be like, babe, why is your mouth open? And I'd be like, my mouth is open? Because my mouth would just drop open. At that time, I didn't realize that, like, well, I should always be breathing through the nose, but it was until I read that book that I was like, I need to adjust my breathing patterns. So first off, let me tell you where I am now. I'm at a spot when it comes to grappling and when it comes to jiu-jitsu that it takes a certain type of person to push me to start breathing through my mouth. Breathing through my mouth isn't bad. And there are certain opponents that I do, but by the time I'm breathing through my mouth, most of the time my opponents have already been, most of the time my opponents are fairly cooked, right? It takes like, probably 90-something% of people that I roll with, I don't have to open my mouth. And that's a challenge I set for myself when I roll nowadays. I try to ask myself, okay, can I beat this guy without having to breathe through my mouth? Meaning, can I beat this person without having to elevate my heart rate? Okay? Doesn't mean that I won't elevate my heart rate. If I find that I'm having to work hard to roll with someone, that's not a bad thing. But most of the time, my goal is to beat them without having to without having to breathe heavy. Okay? And I can do that with the vast majority of people I roll with these days because of the skill that I built over time. Because when I started doing this in 2016, 2017, it wasn't like this. Okay? First off, I had to adjust many habits that it came to my breathing. The first thing is I had to learn how to breathe into my diaphragm. There's a course in the Stronger Human community on school.com called the Stronger Human Movement Foundations. It is part of a 6-course bundle that's like $47. And in the Stronger Human Movement Foundations, I have a few drills in there that will teach you how to breathe through the diaphragm. Because for majority of people, many people, when they start to breathe hard, many people resort to their secondary breathing muscles, or they start to breathe up here. Okay? They breathe into the upper chest, traps, rise, etc. The first thing one needs to learn, I'm not going to go in depth here in this, but you need to learn how to breathe into the diaphragm, have expansion, have diaphragmatic control. That's the first thing you need to learn. From there, you need to make sure that outside of any form of exercise that you're always breathing through your nose. And this is very important when you're asleep. So when you're asleep, that's 6, 7, 8 hours. And many people have disordered breathing when they're sleeping, whether they're snoring or have sleep apnea. So you need to do things so that you can breathe through your nose all through the night. I still use mouth tape. Nowadays, though, I don't need mouth tape to breathe through the nose, but I like having it on just in case for some reason I have a little bit of a stuffy nose or I got sick a little bit. I want to make sure I'm breathing through my nose when I'm asleep. So I still use mouth tape. But when you breathe, one thing I found when I started doing this back in 2017 was that my sleep quality improved drastically. I had a lower heart rate when I was asleep because I was breathing through my nose. I always felt more recovered when I was breathing through my nose when I slept. And when I found that on nights that I wasn't using mouth tape earlier, when I would like let my mouth open at night, etc., and wake up with a dry mouth, my sleep quality was worse, right? My HRV was lower. All my stats were worse. So it's important to reform your breath during your day. There's also other things about breathing while moving and lifting, which I'm not going to talk about here. But that's one aspect of this. Your chronic breathing patterns have to change so that you're always, even in exercise, you're breathing into your diaphragm. And when you're not in exercising, you're always breathing through your nose. That has to be your default. That's the first thing. Now, the second way to put this into application is with your sport or your martial art. And this is kind of what I would do with jiu-jitsu. I would try to not allow my mouth to open when I rolled with people. And when I started doing this, it was super frustrating because it didn't feel like I could get enough air in. I felt like it was I felt like I couldn't get enough air. And then I would have to open my mouth to be able to continue, to be able to continue the output. But over time, what would happen was I would be able to have longer and longer and longer bouts without having to open my mouth. Okay. And again, the goal, the goal was to increase my power output while keeping my heart rate low. And when you're not breathing through your mouth, your heart rate is lower. So my goal has been to increase how much power I can produce on an opponent in jiu-jitsu without having to resort to mouth breathing. And then by the time I'm breathing through my mouth, they're already huffing and puffing, right? So that means I'm going to be able to have less stressful sessions of grappling, less stressful workout sessions because I'm breathing through the nose, okay? I want to also mention this doesn't mean, because at the end of this video, I'm going to give you some ideas you can try out for your own like training sessions outside of whether you're a grappler or whatever your sport is. I'm going to give you some ideas for your training sessions to improve this capacity. But this doesn't mean that you never breathe through the mouth. I have sessions, usually 1 or 2 sessions that are focused on higher output. This week, a lot of times I'll use my tank sled, but earlier this week, I was out on my trail and I was doing sprints. 20 seconds as hard as humanly possible, as fast as I can manage, while resting for 90 seconds, and I had 8 repetitions of that. In between, and when I'm sprinting, I am breathing through my mouth. I'm having oronasal ventilation, so I can get much more air in, so I can produce as much power as possible, because that is the intent of that workout, okay? In between the sets, so after I finish that 20 seconds, I try to come as fast as I can to breathing through my nose, because breathing through my nose is going to allow me to get that heart rate down. It's going to let my heart rate come down from like 165 and it will bring me down to like 130, 135 before my next bout of that sprint. So understanding this and understanding how you can then toggle your breathing and have different breathing patterns to bring your heart rate down, here's the context. I'm working really hard on cooking an opponent, and I get into a position in jiu-jitsu where I can hold this side control position, or now I'm in mount. Okay, I'm in an advantageous position. Let me start to breathe through my nose so I can bring my heart rate down, but let me do things against my opponent to make them work, make them keep that heart rate up, keep cooking them, right? So now my heart rate's down and their heart rate's still up. They're still cooking. They're still super stressed, and I'm chilling, right? So you still have workouts that are hard, 1 to 2 a week, workouts that are really going to push your heart rate, but a lot of your other workouts are meant to increase that zone 2 capacity, that nasal breathing capacity. This is why Mark Allen was able to build such a huge gas tank. Not because he always pushed himself super hard when it came to every single one of his sessions, which athletes tend to do. This is why he wouldn't train with a lot of other triathletes, because they would always be training too hard. It's so that you can increase that capacity, so that you can outlast your opponent, so that you can have higher outputs while bringing less stress to yourself. Because long term, what this is going to allow, this is going to have more longevity as an athlete. It's the athletes that redline all the time that end up burning out the fastest. And the athletes that are able to consistently get better and improve and improve and improve, those athletes can last the longest. Because let me tell you again, my goal is to be doing this when I'm 60, 70, 80. So I know that if I can just bump up that heart rate, bump up my ability to have high output with low stress on my system, that's going to be good for me. Doesn't mean I don't have purposeful, stressful workouts. But now I'm at a point where 99%, like 99% of people I roll with, I'm not going to have to open my mouth and rolling with them. And I'm not saying this is to brag, but I'm just saying this is where I am now because I've been doing this for so long. And if I were the person who just shunned it because of what research says, I wouldn't have this capacity. That's why this is important. So, that being said, as I mentioned, lifestyle, figure out a way to fix your breathing, diaphragmatic breathe through your nose in life. In your sport, breathe as much as you can through your nose and increase that capacity within your sport so that over time, you're able to have more output, less stressful sessions, still have high output without having to open your mouth. It doesn't mean you never open your mouth. It just means you're not forced to open your mouth as soon as your opponents are forced to open their mouths. And then what we're doing here in application on the assault bike, okay? On the assault bike, we had a podcast with Hinshaw, aerobic capacity. And actually, some other resources you can use to learn about nasal breathing. And because there's even other things I do. I hate mosquitoes, and I always get bit in my garage at this time of day, and it's sneaking up on me. Okay, I'm gonna pause this because I need to go get some. I need to go get this mosquito repellent real quick. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. Testing test kit. Perfect. This is mosquito repellent. This will hopefully keep less mosquitoes on me. I'm still going to get bit, but not nearly as much because of this thing. So let's talk about what we're doing on the exercise bike here. I mentioned resources. What got me on thinking about nasal breathing and performance was Patrick Mckeown's book, The Oxygen Advantage. He had a book he came out with in 2020 called The Breathing Cure that has even more tactics. There are certain things I do before I compete, certain breath hold practices that I do. Again, I'm going to be sharing this in the big nasal breathing, the big breathing video that's coming to my channel in 3 months. But there are certain things I learned from there. My buddy Phil DeRue, he's a strength coach for combat athletes. He also knows a lot about the benefit of nasal breathing, and he applies certain things when it comes to his athletes and their breathing so that they can perform better. So again, these are people that are putting these things to practice. And Chris Hinshaw, Aerobic Capacity. He was the director of programming for CrossFit. He's worked with CrossFit's greatest athletes. And earlier this year, Chris was on the podcast, and we talked about how I could actually progress some of this output on an exercise bike and use it to really increase, really have statistics to increase my zone 2 aerobic capacity, pretty much my power output while nasal breathing. Okay, so what I do, and let me just tell you how I started. Maybe it was late last year or the beginning of this year when I started doing these workouts on the exercise bike. I would have 2 workouts per week. One workout with a shorter time domain, 10 or so minutes. Another workout at a longer time domain, 20 minutes. It started 10, 20. That's how it started. To test this, okay, and when the thing is when you're doing this workout, it could be on an assault bike, it can be on a rowing machine. Outside, you can do it, but it's harder to track your power output outside. That's why these tools are good, because you can actually track your power output, your wattage, or your RPMs. When I started, I was able to do 10 minutes at around 200 and I think I was able to do maybe 270 watts for 10 minutes. I was able to maybe go a little bit higher, but 270 watts for a 10-minute period. And when I went above 270 watts, it took a little bit, but then I'd have to start breathing through my mouth. So then I lowered it. So again, the goal isn't to produce as much power as you can. It's to produce as much power as you can while breathing through the nose. Okay. You'll also see I'm using a Morpheus chest strap. It tracks my heart rate. I don't only go based on heart rate. I go based off of breathing through the nose, because generally when you're breathing through your nose, you're in a zone 2 heart rate. Okay. I could talk to you, etc. But then I can shut my mouth and breathe, and boom, that's the goal. So keep that in mind. Now, the 20-minute session, see, that's what happens. You mess with me. Actually, these mosquitoes don't give a fuck. I'm going to put this behind me so that ideally the incense can burn towards me, and the mosquitoes that are trying to bite my back, because that's what they try to do, they die. Anyway, or they won't die, they'll just be repelled. Now, the 20-minute session will probably be a little bit lower output than that. So when I did the 20-minute session, I think I was maintaining a 250 something RPM or 260 something RPM for 20 minutes. So the goal is to increase the output breathing through the nose at those and increase the power output. So my goal for the end of this year, my goal was to see, okay, you know what? Let's see if I can get myself to 310 RPM, 310 watts, which would be maybe 60 RPMs. Let me see if I can get there for 20 minutes. Today was a sick PR, okay? Because I hit my goal a while back, but today I did 30 minutes. My average wattage was around 320 watts for 30 minutes. And I peaked at around 330, but around 330 is when I would find okay, you know what? My heart rate started to go up. I'm starting to feel the need to breathe through the mouth. I need to bring it down. Okay. So now I'm able to have a higher power output while still breathing through the nose. I've seen this I felt the difference in my jujitsu too. Like my cardio was already good with grappling. Now it's even better. So again, the goal isn't to produce as much power as possible in these workouts. The goal is to increase that aerobic capacity. And this is a really annoying type of cardiovascular workout because you know you can work harder. This is the type of stuff that people don't really like to do because you know you can go harder, but you're limited by your ventilation. You're limited by your breathing. That's where the magic is. Because if we can increase our efficiency of breathing, we can increase our power output while maintaining a low heart rate. We're not going to be as stressed. We're going to be able to maintain parasympathetic tone. We're going to be able to maintain calm while having high power. And again, in the context of a fight, in the context of a match, in the context of a game, you're able to have higher output than your opponent. You're going to be able to last longer than them. And the context of just overall training longevity, you're going to be able to train with solid intensities while not stressing your system out. A majority of my jiu-jitsu sessions are super parasympathetic. My instructor Cassio has always told me, he's told me for a while, he's like, when Nsima rolls, he looks like he's going to fall asleep. Because when I roll with most people, it's not a disrespect thing. It's just that my heart rate isn't pushed to that level because I've become much more efficient with my breathing. I'm becoming even more efficient. So I'm not saying that I'm the best at this, but I'm saying that's just the nature of what's happened. And that's why you can build this. You can do 2 workouts a week. And I got this Chris Hinshaw gave me this idea. It's kind of what I've been doing since. And I've made my own adjustments to it. But, you know, Chris had, when he helped me do this, he had me doing 2 a week. Okay. And this is what you can do too. You could do one session that's 10 to 15 minutes, slightly higher power output. And again, figure out what is the highest power output I can have while breathing through the nose. Find that, stay there. Don't allow yourself to breathe through your mouth. That is the limiter. You're putting a governor on your breathing. One session that's lower time domain, 10 to 15 minutes. Another session that is maybe 20 to 25 minutes. Over the next few months, it could take you 3, 5, 6 months. Then your short sessions, because nowadays my short sessions are 15 to 20 minutes and my long sessions are 30 to 40 minutes. Okay, that's what you're going to be building up to, but you don't start there. And then something you're going to be looking for is every month or so, you want to be able to have slightly higher power output. Some days, let me tell you, some days you won't feel fully recovered. You're going to get on the bike and your performance isn't going to be where it is or you want it to be. But over time, you're looking for a slow gradient increase of power output while maintaining that same heart rate. Okay? Because that means now we're increasing that aerobic base. We're increasing our ability to stay calm with higher power. Okay? Again, I want to say this last thing because there's so many more things I want to talk about. Like there's historical context here. Japanese samurai Miyamoto Musashi had this book, The Book of Five Rings. He was the best samurai of all time. He was not fictional, he was real. In his Book of Five Rings, he talked multiple times about breathing, and he even talked about how one must not furrow their brow. So there's this idea of keeping a calm face in combat, which, if you keep a calm face, breathing through the nose, you're able to maintain parasympathetic activity, parasympathetic tone. He also talked about taking your opponent off of their breathing rhythm and putting them on their back foot and taking advantage of them when their breathing becomes disoriented. It's like people that put this shit into application knew it. And this is why, again, people like Mike really frustrate me because he's just talking. He doesn't put it into application. You can see it when he rolls. You can see this guy turn gray within minutes because he doesn't know how to breathe. So take that with you, okay? I'm going to have a much deeper dive video on this topic in the next few months. That's going to go into even other aspects of the importance of breath and breathing. Hickson Gracie had a lot of good stuff to talk about this topic in his book, Breathe, A Life in Flow. He talked about breathing a lot in that one too. And there's some cool things with like diaphragmatic control and Nauli Kriya that, again, I want to talk about later. But I hope this gives you an understanding on why you want to build this ability and why it's going to be beneficial for you, not just as a jiu-jitsu athlete, but just someone who wants to increase their aerobic base. It's important. It's very important. And it's one of the reasons why, again, if you're an athlete, not every single workout has to kill you. You got to understand that. There's some workouts, like I do this workout sometimes before jiu-jitsu, right? It can be annoying, but the thing is, it doesn't kill the system. It just increases that capacity. It allows me to have more output with stressing myself out less. That's the goal. So, yeah, the Stronger Human Movement Foundations, or there's a Stronger Human bundle, $47 for 7 courses. That's linked there. More courses in the school community. We have an October, November challenge going on right now. 23,000 members in there learning rope flow and a bunch of different practices. I have courses in there for gym training, etc. My goal is to put all of my knowledge into the school community so that people can pick it at a la carte. All the equipment I use, ropes, maces, clubs, sandbags, all that stuff is at the Stronger Human store. There will be a Black Friday sale going on when that comes, but it's not yet. So anyway, let me know if you guys have any questions, and let me know how you guys feel about this type of format of video where I'm just talking raw, right? It's not as polished as the other content, but that's why it lives on this channel. And I hope no one minds that I'm collaborating this content, because I know some people that are on the other channel maybe would appreciate some of this raw content and raw information. So yeah, I appreciate all of you. Let's continue becoming stronger humans together, and I will talk to you all very soon.